So welcome to the Working and Living in Japan panel. Hopefully you'll find this useful, interesting, maybe. So, okay, my name's Laura. I lived in Japan for 3 years. I spent 3 of them as an ALT, 2 in a small-ish town in Mito, which is in Ayacon, and I spent 1 year in Tokyo, working in Shinagawa. I was also lucky enough to do an internship with SEPCO. Does everyone know if I say SEPCO who I mean? No? You've all heard of TEPCO? After the earthquake, Tokyo Electrical Power. SEPCO is the Chubu branch. I got offered this internship 1 day before the earthquake. I still went 3 months later, but I didn't go to the nuclear power facility because it was shutting down. So, hopefully, this panel will give you some information that I would have found useful when I moved out. I knew about 10 words of Japanese. Most important, hello, thank you, and I'm sorry. Were the best. And maybe if you're thinking, do I want to go for a long holiday or do I actually want to try and move out there? If you're undecided, hopefully this will help a little. Okay, so main talking points. What to consider? Types of jobs that are available, where in Japan you're happy to be or not. The red tape. Japan has a lot of red tape, a lot of hoops to jump through. Housing. There are many, many options for various prices. So I'll go through those. Traveling within Japan, because obviously I was in Mito, it was about 2 hours from Tokyo, but I didn't just want to see those 2 places. I went to Okinawa, and I went down to Osaka and Hiroshima and all of that, and a few helpful tips. So, first of all, stereotypes of Japan. I'm sure everyone here has got some images of Japan in their heads. So some are true-ish. Politeness. Okay, there was a year between me coming back to the UK, and literally I went into every shop and bowed to the assistant multiple times and said arigato instead of thank you, and got looked at like I was insane. It took about 3 months for me to stop bowing at people when I came back. But it is all sort of superficial. It's just a lot of just bow and you're fine. Japan is expensive. It is if you constantly think of how much it costs in the UK. When you're out there on holiday, obviously, yes, that you will, because you'll be converting. But when you're living out there and you're earning in yen, stop. Stop thinking, well, oh, that's 10,000 yen in 220 yen to the pound, or it was when I was out there. 10,000 yen, that's however much. When you're being paid a salary of 250,000 yen a month, 10,000 yen, not so bad. High school skirts. Yes, they are all that short. Yes, not in school. The teachers will go around and tell them to lengthen them, but all the girls will roll them up to about there once they get out of school grounds, and if you're going up behind them on an escalator or into a station, yeah. Obviously some of you may enjoy that side, but not. Love hotels, yes they do exist. Some you can sneak into with your friends when you have nowhere else to stay, and because they have because normally they have a machine, you don't have to go and talk to anybody. You just go up to a machine, you pick the room you want from the picture, the one with the lovely heart-shaped bed and all of that, and you go, I'll stay in there. You don't actually have to deal with anyone.
Is it like a room almost?
The wall room, yes.
The newest one, yeah.
I haven't seen it. No. But they do exist, and they have some really dodgy names like Seed. Trains run on time. All the time. You will get a very polite, I am terribly, terribly sorry, we are awful, awful people if the train runs 1 minute late. It will come over on a town. Also, what's really good is if the trains run late and you're going to be late for work, you can pick up a little slip from the train station that says the trains were running late. And you can give that to your boss. So unfortunately, you can't lie, like I occasionally do over here, saying my train is late. False. Racism and xenophobia. I suppose it could be true. I didn't find it very much. Some people say if you're called a gaijin, it's being used rudely. Normally I take it on the tone it's being said. I refer to myself as gaijin, so I didn't think of it as a rude term for people to call me. Everyone loves anime and manga, and that's a problem. No, sadly. I'm sorry if I've just burst a bubble of everyone walks around and they have their favourite series and they're mad about it. It's not. It's really good if you're into series when you're teaching kids. It's great, but only if you're into the show they're into. If you're, for example, FMA, that went over a lot of their heads when I was out there because the new one hadn't come out yet. I was very sad because it was my favourite show. But it is considered, I got weird looks from a lot of my colleagues, Japanese colleagues, because they knew I was into anime and manga. And it was it's considered something you keep quiet as you get older. You don't sit there at your desk with your figurines around or have a picture of a character on your desktop on your laptop. That's a big thing. Personal space. This whole idea of distance. No, get on a train anywhere in Tokyo during rush hour. Personal space, non-existent. There is a guy literally pushing you on. I do not kid, I've had it happen to me. Yeah, personal space, don't worry about that. And sushi all day, every day. I found that a lot of the foods that we get in Japanese restaurants, they're the home-cooked stuff. They're not what you will necessarily find in the larger restaurants. If you go to the little tiny ramen shops, you're good, but you might want some fruit and veg at some point, so not have that. Okay, moving on. Is Japan right for me, or is it a holiday better? Just, you've got to think about the distance. I didn't even think about it, I was 21, I didn't really care. I was away from home. But remember, direct flights, 11 to 12 hours. It's a long time. If you go,
is that return or just straight there?
that's one way. 11 hours in a plane.
How long is America again?
It depends on where you go in America. Las Vegas is about 11 hours.
I'll just offer something as well. The country has something to do with visit all year. It's not like a country where alpine sports are no attractions for. There is some reason to go there all year round, isn't there?
Yeah. So, yeah, and you've got to think, if you think, oh, I'll transit, I'll go via Frankfurt, I'll go via wherever, you're looking at probably a 15-hour plus flight, because by the time you land in Europe, it's early hours of the morning and you've got to wait for the first flight out to the UK. I slept in Charles de Gaulle Airport for 6 hours between flights. Maybe slightly cheaper, and also consider if you can't afford to travel, will people come to you? That's one thing. I had a lot of friends who came out visiting because they were equally insane about anime and stuff, so they came out to me. I just looked up a few prices for Christmas, because obviously that's a big time for a lot of people working home. Non-stop, £740 plus. That's a return. And even, transit, 770. A March flight, 700. Also, adaptable. How adaptable are you? Because you have to find a new normal. I lived in London, I'm from London, and then I moved to Mito, a small town, not as much on my doorstep as I was used to. So you've just got to find, are you going to be able to change how you think about what you want to do? Very good.
Okay.
But I lived in a Leo palace, so I had quite a good internet connection. Willing to work. This goes for all forms of jobs, not just ALTs, because a lot of people think the ALT is the easy job. It wasn't. I started work at 8:30, I didn't finish till 7, because I did after school clubs. That's That was an extra that I opted to do, but it meant I bonded with the students I was teaching a lot more. And also what do you want to achieve from your job? If you go out just for, I want to be in Japan, I want to go there to see all the anime and the manga and the shows and the music, and you're not too concerned about the job, you may find that you may find a few problems down the line because you will be expected to do things and take part. Willing to learn the language. I'm not talking to JLPT level 1, I'm talking to the base of the first level. If you can get that, you're pretty much golden for getting around and learning. And also just sort of learning about what's the culture, and things like what's acceptable, what's not. I made a few mistakes. My first few months. No, what did I do? Because it was my first teaching job, I used a lot of my old school experience of how I was taught languages, just for ideas, because I had to teach conversational English to kids who didn't want to learn. And so I was trying to draw on those experiences, and I used a couple of lesson plans that just, and that's not fun. Also finances, when you move out. If you go for interviews for jobs, they will normally give you an idea of how much it will cost. If you know you're going to get super excited about being in Japan for the first time and buy stuff, double it quite easily. I think I managed to spend 3 times what I took out there in the first couple of months because I went into K-books and Animate and hello, and bought everything. Work in Japan, okay, the main jobs you'll probably have heard of are the AOT and the Eikaiwa, which would be Blitz or GABA, those the private schools. Those are quite easy to find over here. You can go to, I've got Gaijin up there, if you don't know that site. It's quite a good site for getting just basic information on the types of jobs. They're available, it's all in, mostly all the ads are in English, but they do give you some idea, some reference. Other forms of work you can, there are some ads out there that you can apply for outside of Japan. A lot of them will say in Japan only. And also be careful because they may not sponsor your visa, which is a whole mess of worry. I had a friend, she was a mangaka, she worked with the Prince of Tennis team, and they wouldn't sponsor her visa because of the type of job and that, and she had to jump through about 10 billion hoops and visit the immigration office 10 times before she could actually get anything sorted. It was long and stressful because they wouldn't help her with it. So, I'm going to compare two AOTs. Obviously, I'm going to guess most people have heard of JET? JET? No? A few people? JET's the government scheme. It's quite sought after, it's got a long process. So you've got an application and then an interview. Normally the salary is 280,000 yen a month, and then that rises to 300,000 after the first year. But they say they will possibly subsidise your accommodation costs. It's not guaranteed. And also, JET determines where you'll live. They will tell you, this is your apartment. This is where you go. You don't have any say in the matter. And your contract it's normally running on our academic year, which isn't the Japanese one. Japan's April to March, so you come in partway through the year. They say this is so that the teachers can get to know the new students, and so they can tell you who the troublemakers are. I personally don't swallow that because I went out at the start of the year and it's fine. It's absolutely fine. The teachers are really good. And also, JET doesn't let you transfer. You can't change location. So if you're stuck in the middle of nowhere, you can't ask to be moved to a smaller town or that a couple of years down the line. So, but the pro on the JET scheme is the salary. It's constant. That is what you get every single month. It's not prorated when you have holiday or anything like that. Whereas the private firm, Interact, that's who I went with. a little biased, I had a really good experience with them. I know people who had really crappy experiences with some of their offices. So I'm not going to sing the praises of Interact and say you should all go with them, they're brilliant. No, I was lucky, and I do admit that. They have application and interview with an English grammar test, and you have to do a little mock lesson. Very easy. It's a 10-minute video that they can show to the local education office. And go, this is the insane person you will be getting as you sing and dance in front of the camera for 10 minutes. Their salary is between 230 and 255k a month. That is not every single month. When you have holiday, so between the end of the academic year in March and the start of the new one, your summer holiday and Christmas, your salary is prorated. So you get less. You normally get under 200,000 a month on those months. And if you're there more than a year, that's when your city council tax is due, which is about 50,000 yen. So when you've already got your salary dropped down and then you have to pay your council, your city tax, it's not the best situation. But they do have a working maximum of 29.5 hours per week. That's as much as you can be scheduled to teach. That's not if you volunteer to help with the tennis club or the Nintendo club or anything else like that. Also, they will assist with finding housing. They'll give you options. I was given, you can go to this private place, you can use this Leo Palace here with the pros and cons, but the decision was mine at the end of the day. And you can request a transfer after your first year. That's how I managed to get to Tokyo. It's not easy. 5 people from my office were recommended to Tokyo. I was number 1 on the list, and I was the only one that got the transfer. So I'm not saying if you go with a private company, you can do this and you can do that. It's just, it's available to you. If you do consider Interact, the Hitachi office was really nice, and Tokyo office number 2. The Yokohama office is not so good from experience, but it changes. And if you're an ALT, you get to experience all the fun of sports day in the blistering heat. So yeah, running around carrying an ice block. They have to pass it on. It's actually quite good fun. And then you also get, for example, a little dance. It's not on a show. So these are some of the benefits if you work in, for example, a school, in one of their national schools. You do get, they want to integrate you into the community of the school. So again, you have to get used to things like this. Seeing them dancing for an hour every day outside the staff room as they're practicing. You know the dance better than they do by the end of it. ACOs, so these are the private language schools, like Nova, which went under. So Berlitz is a big one. With Berlitz, you'll be given a base school. That's your main school where you will do most of your teaching, but you will be expected to travel to other schools. You have to teach by the Berlitz method, which, as my friend who worked for them said, is the really shitty. She's a teacher. She did her teaching as a foreign language certificate before she went out there, and she was driven a bit crazy by how she had to teach. She had a textbook. She had to go through the textbook, and basically the way she was trained was to talk really slowly and mime, which she wasn't too comfortable with. But again, it's one of the biggest schools. It's one of the safer options, probably not going to go under, but I'm going to do. There are 2 forms of contracts with Berlitz. You can go on contract where they set your schedule and you get a regular monthly income, or you can do the pay per lesson scheme where you tell them you'd like to teach this much, and then they'll give you a schedule. You have to teach children. Not an option. So if you're there going, I really don't want to teach kids, it's really not an option. It's a big market in Japan, is getting kids and keeping them forever in your school. So you have to, and there's a dress code. Even with an ALT, Japan has a dress code for everything, which I'll go through in a minute. But then to compare, GABA is you're paid by per lesson only. That's the only kind they have. They give you in-house training again. You submit your schedule, and so forth. The only problem with GABA is you kind of have to compete for your lessons against your colleagues. You're fighting to get recommendations from the students, so that you get the scheduled time. But obviously, if you're new and you want lots of money, you won't mind, but it's fine. Okay, next, location. Location. As I say, it's all important. Rural areas. I will say this now, if you don't like, if you live in a city and you can never imagine yourself being in a rural area, you will find no positives to it, even in Japan. Even in the UK, you would probably loathe the rural area. But it does have, I found, some positives. It's cheaper, which is always good. You have to integrate more into the local community. I did tea ceremony at a local community school, spoke no English. I learnt left and right very quickly that way. Also, it can really help you develop the language. In my school, the teachers spoke English a little. It was mostly Japanese, and they were all horrified when I told them I didn't speak a word. But it really, really helped. I went home with a headache for about 6 months because my brain was just trying to cope with the Japanese, especially if you sit in a staff meeting and you don't fall asleep. All the other teachers will, but because you're the clear foreigner, you have to try and stay awake as much as possible. Seriously, teachers will stack books in front of them and they know they've got a staff meeting so they can fall asleep without the head teacher seeing them. I never had enough books to manage it. I was like, I have toys, I have flashcards, no, it's not going to work. And you get to see more of Japan, like the traditional sense, if you like rice fields and things. No, I really enjoyed being just outside of Tokyo. The negative, obviously difficult to get around without a car. Bicycle, best friend. But the biggest crime in Ibaraki Ken was bicycles getting stolen. In a year, seriously, they were there and we had so many people stealing bikes. And sadly, I became a victim. My favourite bike got stolen. Also, restricted access to facilities. You are limited as to where you can shop and find things. But again, if you sort of adapt what you're used to, you can find things. I learnt to love baseball.
When you said limited to where you can shop, is that they don't let you in places or?
It's not that they don't let you in places. It's, for example, if you want to try and find clothes that fit. For example, I was restricted to Uniqlo, and thankfully an huge Aeon shop about 2 train stops away from me. But if you're in the really rural area, you might not have any clothes shops that will stock something that would fit you. And so you either have to buy 2 shirts or 3 shirts and try and sew them together. I had someone who did that. You're stuck until you get to the bigger towns. That's what I meant by restricted. Also, if you really enjoy the cinema, you might have to travel to the cinema quite far. So, for example, where I lived, I learnt to love going on a boat into the lake we had, and I learnt to love going to the batting cages. Didn't do any of that in the UK, but it was what was available. And quite good fun to imagine certain pupils' heads being pulled after a week or so. And also limited English-speaking community. If you...
Is it easy to get hold of a motorbike? Is it easy to get hold of a motorbike over there?
A motorbike. I'm not sure about motorbike. Cars aren't too bad, and normally if your job will require you to drive, they will help you. They will probably subsidise the car, or at least help you find one cheaply. The only issue is if you're there more than a year, you will have to get a Japanese driving licence. As if you're on a British driving licence, that's fine. You don't have to take the test. If you've got an American one, you do.
Don't forget you have to apply for your international driving permit to go with it.
The
If you're
international
using your British
driving
license, you need an international driving permit
permit.
as well.
Yeah, and you normally have to get that out. So I got my international driving permit for the first year because I didn't know if I would need it. I never drove. I had a friend who drove instead. Find someone who drives and become their friend.
Similar to that, during my time over there, I had a lot of people with different things, I had to do with immigration and stuff like that. And driving licenses was something that came a great deal. The only thing I heard from motorbike licenses was driving car. Just don't even bother. I don't know why, I never actually looked into it in more detail, but I just heard from several people, you think it would be something that would happen.
From what I remember, I don't remember seeing an awful many motorbikes out. It was generally bicycles and cars. But I had a friend, she had to go through the whole driving test. Thankfully, she had like JLPT level 2. She had to do, I think she had to do Britain at some point as well. So yeah, this is just a couple of images. So this is where I lived. Swan boats, they became a brilliant amusement for us. So you get all the beauty, but then you may find yourself in a situation like this. That's an English newspaper with a crossword. And that is all the ARTs I knew crowded around it, wanting to complete it. That was, my friend, she came over from the UK, this was the first night. She brought the paper with her and we all took it and wanted to do the crossword. She was sat in the corner going, oh dear Lord. City areas, obviously lots of facilities, lots of shops, lots of restaurants, lots of leisure things to do. It's easy to travel around because normally the trains and buses and so forth, they're a bit more frequent, but that does mean it can be a bit more expensive. Larger English-speaking community, especially if you start out not speaking a lot, that can be useful. And then you also have the option of gaijin houses, which saved my butt when I moved to Tokyo.
Is there a difference between the garage houses and the locals houses? Really? The regular.
I do explain about the gaijin houses in a bit. Basically, you will find they're not, it's not that they don't want to rent the apartment to a foreigner, it's more that you walk into a housing agency, clearly not Japanese, and you just see the terror in their eyes at having to, because they're just like, they won't speak Japanese, they won't understand anything, it's going to be horrendous. So it's not that they don't want to, it's just there is a barrier sometimes. Not always. And so I found, I went to Sakura House, literally walked in and went, I need a room. Had a room, yes, sorted, no problem, done, dusted, no questions. Which can be a great option. You get to meet a lot of people, not necessarily from English-speaking countries, but other people in a similar situation. Negatives, you won't be pushed to learn, necessarily, if you're in the city. When I worked in Tokyo, I had 4 schools that I rotated around. I wasn't integrated into the schools like I was in Mito, where I was in one school. So that's why I went to the sports day, I went to everything. So, also, housing is more expensive, unless you go into a gaijin house. Even then, it can be more expensive. Also, if you've got the English-speaking community, it can be insular. I know people who went through their entire time in Japan and didn't learn a word. Couldn't be fussed. They knew people who spoke English, they only hung out with them, and that was it, and they were happy. But if you're not used to cities, that is not from the internet that I did. I know a lot of people are like, sure, you're crossing, it's insane. Yeah, so are most places in Tokyo. I had friends from Canada who just, the people drove them insane because also the speed with which they walked very slowly.
It's fun to sit in Starbucks. It's fun to sit in Starbucks.
It is fun to sit in Starbucks. I think I titled this picture huge Starbucks.
What is that whole building Starbucks?
No, just that floor there, and you can sit out and watch. But it's crowded in the city, so if you don't like people, don't go to the city. Red tape, okay, quickly. 4 types of visas you may need to working holiday visa, which lasts a year normally. You have to be 18 to 30 and have no spouse or children. The normal one, which you would be on as an ALT, is your regular visa, specialises in whatever. It's normally issued for a year, but I know some people who have got it for 3 or 5 years in length. You'll need to get, normally your company will help you get a certificate of eligibility over here first, and then you have to visit the city office when you get over there to actually get things sorted. The third one, re-entry permits. These are your friends if you ever leave the country. Don't leave Japan without one. They won't let you back in, regardless of if your visa is still in date. You have to have one of these. So yeah, if you go on holiday in the middle of your visa, you need one of these to come back in. You have to go to the immigration office. Good fun, that one. And you have to go back to the office to collect it. And each time you have to get a ticket and sit and wait for your number to be called. So it's quite a long process. You do normally have to pay for them, and again, they last for normally the length of your visa, for 1 year. And then right to work. I worked as an ALT, but I got an evening job as a private business English teacher. I had to get an addendum to my visa to let me do it. Lots of people don't bother with this, as long as it's not with your company, and you never tell anyone in your company you're doing extra work. You might get away with it. I know lots of people did that, but I don't endorse it. Get your proper paperwork.
What happens if you don't? And you get caught?
I think it's fine.
How much?
It can be deportation. It's normally a huge fine, or you can go home. Also, don't overstay your visa ever. I had 2 friends. One, she went to the immigration office and said, my visa's ending, but I'm staying for a holiday, and she got the amendment put in her passport. The other one just decided she'd go on the holiday because she was leaving Japan anyway, and it wouldn't matter. She got to the airport and they were just there going, how much was it? 300,000, 400,000 yen? Or deportation, which means she couldn't come back for 3 to 5 years, I think it was. So if you don't care about ever coming back to Japan, that's fine. You can get deported and have a cool story which you can tell your friends, I got deported from Japan. Wouldn't necessarily advise that. Essentials. Anyway, these are things that I would recommend you take for various reasons. So men, okay? Trousers, depending on your size. This is all depending on size, okay? It really is. Trousers, shoes, shirts, boxers. I would say there are probably other things, but sadly I'm not a man and I didn't get into those deep conversations with my male friends over there. Yeah?
There's just one thing, I know someone said, asked about shirts there. Shoulder width is a big deal. Well, Japanese cut tends to be quite slender, quite broad, problems with jackets, shirts.
Yeah.
Shoes, are there any guys who are over size 9 in this room? Take shoes with you.
Yeah. Also, whilst I'm on this, tattoos. Tattoos must never be seen. I mean, I've got 2. One I didn't have to come, I've got one on my back. I always had to wear a vest top under my shirt so that it couldn't be seen through.
Wow.
It's an old stereotype, the whole, it's the Yakuza thing, and you're honestly there going, seriously, you think I'm in the Yakuza? They all know you're not, but it is still. I went to, I had a meeting at the education office, and you could see the tattoo through my shirt, and it got commented on by the superiors in the office. Never. Always double check. So yeah, I also had a friend, he had a tattoo on his arm here in summer, so he couldn't wear short sleeve shirts. What he did is he bought a long sleeve shirt, cut one arm up to there, and cut one arm to there to cover his tattoo. And that is how he kept cool in the summer. So, women, shirts. If you have a chest, it's a bit of a problem. Unfortunately, if you're any bigger than I am, take things with you, because I had to put a pin in all my shirts to keep them closed. Trousers, again, depending on your waist size, I was a size 14. I had to go to the larger size area. Not great for myself. thing, but anyway. Shoes, I just managed, I'm between a 6 and a 7, and I just managed to find shoes in certain shops. Not in every shop. If you're a size 3 or a size 4, you're fine. I got very jealous of all the people with tiny feet. So good, like, shoes. Bras, again. I have a theory on Japanese sizing of bras, because of my experience, is that the size of the bra is not what should actually fit in, it's what it will be after. The padding in a lot of the bras I thought was quite extreme. I bought one bra because it had a tartan pattern, and that was it. I went to Australia and just bought as many bras as I could, because they fitted. Yeah, don't. This is from my friends and a lot of people who've said it. Towel's fine. Tampons not so much. So if you can take them or get them sent over, that's really good. Yeah.
I've heard from people who've gone to South Korea that they can't find deodorant. I was wondering
This
if
is-
the same problem.
I've got to say, and for everyone, deodorant. Yeah, deodorant. When my mum came over from the UK, she came out 3 months after I landed. She literally came, I think, with an entire cake of deodorant and toothpaste. Deodorant, yeah, I found problems, so I would recommend taking your own. Toothpaste. In Japan, the water doesn't have fluoride in it, and neither does the toothpaste, or at least it didn't when I was out there. And I was, I can survive, I'll use Japanese toothpaste, it'll be fine. I don't know whether it was possibly just my experience, but the one I got, it tasted really sugary. I literally thought I was brushing my teeth with sugar. It tasted that sweet. And again, a lot of people have sort of recommended if you've got a toothpaste that you know, for example, you've got any sort of sensitive teeth and that, take your own. And condoms.
Why condoms?
Why size?
Oh,
Men?
okay.
Okay, not always. I'm not saying everyone. Sorry, because you can get them like a size, but just in case. And for women, it's down for women because if you're on a prescription,
So the stereotype is sugar.
I'm sure she wouldn't actually know. I'd have to ask my friends that one. And women, if you're on any prescription contraceptives, check if you can get them when you're out there. You can't always. So if you can't, go for. There we go. Also, shipping. Consider shipping. I got 2 suitcases shipped out to me because I didn't know if I was going to survive when I went out to Japan. I didn't know if I would cope. I honestly didn't. I was 21. I'd been to uni for 3 years. I thought I can live away from home, and then I thought this is a bit further than 5 hours in a car from home. So I only took 1 suitcase out when I went. Now I had 2 suitcases fully packed at home, waiting for my, Mum, I'm not going to have a complete mental breakdown and run to the airport and hop on a plane home and send them over. But if you're pretty confident you can manage it, excess baggage isn't that much, or getting the extra bag. Also, weigh up the value. If you know you're only going to be there a year, is it better to pay for the extra baggage and get clothes that fit? Have clothes that fit with you? Or if you're there for a while, can you cope with the idea of wearing shirts that are slightly too tight and things like that? As I said, Uniqlo and Ayacon are good stores.
So what was wrong with the deodorant?
It didn't do its job. Yeah, it's less antiperspirant and more nice smell. In my experience, I tended to find. And you've got to remember, Japan in the summer is hot and it's humid. And you may, you may be in a school that has no air conditioning. You may just have a few twirly fans that only get put on when all the kids have taken their jackets off. And you're stood there going, I'm not used to this heat and sweating bucket. So it's more the antiperspirant strength. Especially for women, because women tend to sweat more than men. So our deodorants are stronger, so over here at least. Housing options. Time. You've got the regular apartments. These are expensive. Key money. This is not a myth. Key money. Anything from 1 to 3 months rent that you will never see again. It is, as I always sort of explain, it's a gift to the landlord saying, thank you for letting me have this apartment. You won't see it again. And you've then got the deposit, which can be a month, it can be slightly more, and you've got to lay down the first month's rent. Some will ask for a guarantor. Your company may do it, they may not, and you may have to use a private company which will have a fee. When you're looking at descriptions, there are websites up here which I find really useful. LDK, living room, dining room, kitchen, that is how they describe. Sizes may be given in meters squared, but also get used to hearing it in tatami mats. And Tokyo tatami mats are smaller than other tatami mats. So a 6 tatami mat room in Tokyo is not always the same as a 6 tatami mat room in Yokohama or somewhere. Leo Palaces, that's where I live. I say slightly more foreigner friendly. I think that's because a lot of companies use them because they're quite easy. You don't have to pay key money. You do have to pay a deposit though with your rent. And gaijin houses, very cheap. I paid 10,000 yen. No, yeah, 10,000 yen was my deposit. I got 8 of it back at the end. And that was it. That's my rent. And my rent included all my bills. So hello, AC, 24/7 in the summer. And heating 24/7 in the winter. I will say a bit of a warning with gaijin houses, they can tend to be older Japanese houses, which is lovely. I had a tatami mat room, lovely, but cockroaches. Oh no, don't hate the cockroaches, you'll get used to them. The newer the apartment, the better it will be at keeping out cockroaches from the drains and things. But they're just a common thing in the summer of they will be around. You may see one in the train station. You may see one running under your table at a restaurant. Although that was it. You get the hornets. Yeah. I didn't know about some of the really bad insects, and I was happily sat in the staff room when this big red black thing flew in and all the teachers ran out the door. And I was just sat there.
What was the rats like?
I didn't see it. I think we had mice in my gaijin house. I could hear them running around between my ceiling and that. I never actually saw any.
What about spiders?
Um,
My friend told me about spiders the size of his head.
Spiders in the more, again, it's in the more rural areas, in the more countryside areas. Obviously, you get, it's like over here. You know, you tend to get more insects in the rural areas, but cockroaches are just a common thing. And you can get your own sort of fumigation bombs. I did that. I left for Australia in the summer. I was really afraid because I was in my gaijin house, which was an old Japanese house. I thought, I might get cockroaches whilst I'm away. What did I do? I went into the local sort of pharmacy, bought a fumigation bomb, stepped on it, ran out the room and went on holiday for 2 weeks. I thought it'd be okay.
What's key money?
Key money.
Yeah.
That is the 1 to 3 months rent that you just give to the landlord and say bye-bye.
So it's just money you just give for no reason.
Right.
Non-refundable.
It is. There is a tradition to it.
How much?
There is a tradition to it, but as unfortunately, I'm kind of using my American trainer's explanation, and he wasn't so politically correct about things as it's a gift to your landlord, and just wave it bye-bye. You won't see it again. Okay. So this was my Leo Palace. Think of size. No, that's the bed.
It's bigger than my room.
The TV is there, that's the wardrobe, and as you see, I was working and eating possibly at the same time. And that was the door out to mine.
I thought it was a window.
No, that's the sliding door. Sliding door, and then you've got my washing line out back. And then I had a little kitchen with a hob and a sink, and that was it. And a fridge, and a microwave, and a rice cooker all stacked on top of each other.
I think you actually have a bigger room than we have.
It was actually quite big. I managed to fit, oh god, I've forgotten the
Are
name.
those things you go underneath?
Yes.
Kotatsu?
Kotatsu! Yes. I love my kotatsu in winter. I slept under it. I would recommend it for health and safety reasons. You may set things on fire. So, mostly you're going to to Narita when you arrive, just so you don't get completely bombarded like I was, who couldn't read kanji or do anything like that. First and foremost, can you survive without your suitcase? All my friends who turned up and I met at Narita, I was like, right, take a change of clothes out of your suitcase, put it in this rucksack, we're getting your suitcase to Kuroneko to where I live, we ain't carrying it anywhere. It's the best thing. Not all stations, some of the small stations will have escalators, as I learnt at Asakusa, and I had my 10-kilo backpack and my 22-kilo suitcase, both of which were over. I didn't tell the airport this. I managed to sneak my backpack through. I think it weighed about 20 kilos in the end. I felt everything. Trying to get that upstairs after a 12-hour flight, I was not in. It wasn't my best start. So if you can Kuroneko, you can look at it online. They do have it. Just type in Kuroneko into Google and you'll find it. They're lovely. They will also collect from your apartment and take it to the airport. They're also good if you're trying to transport between areas. So because I didn't want to pay for a removal van, I Kuronekoed all my stuff from Mito to Tokyo. It was, I adore them. You can't tell. Also, get a map in English if you can. Most stations do have them in English, but just get one just in case. Also, the pricing system, when you look at the map, some people get a little confused. You have to find, obviously, all the prices will be from that station, and it's a single ticket normally. If you pay like that, you can get day ones, but is it worth getting a Suica? Yes. I will say, again, like Kuroneko, always get a Suica and keep it for life. It's like an oyster. It's like an oyster. So I have my regular commute on there as a monthly travel card, but you also have your top up. It's better than an oyster in ways because you can walk into convenience stores and pay with it. Just slap on. You can go up to a drinks machine and use it to pay. So it's really useful, but that also means you can waste a lot of money and suddenly want to run for a train and not be able to get through the barriers because you've used it on getting the can. Yeah, you just go, again, like over here, you just go to the machine, put your Suica in, type, it comes up with the amount you want to put in, click on it, put the money in, done. Yep, and they can be built into your mobile phone, so you can whack them. So if you see people whacking their mobile phone, yeah, they're also really good at getting picked up to those. So I'd say get a Suica if you don't have the JR pass. And the reason you can get your JR pass validated, do it. JR trains, if you're thinking, are less frequent than the Skyliner, but the Skyliner is more expensive. I love the Skyliner for a way to go into Tokyo. You go into Ueno. It's really nice, but the Skyliner is not part of the JR pass thing. And this site is brilliant if you're trying to figure out what trains you need, what times, and prices. It's brilliant. You just type in where you want to go from and to, and it will give you options for the fastest, the least expensive.
Hyperdia also has a...
Yeah, that is, I think it links through to Hyperdia. It's one of those. Sorry, I'm having to rush. Travelling with Internet. Sorry, I'm having to rush. No, if you're on the JR Pass, this is only if you're on a holiday. If you're only those on a tourist visa, okay, you can get the JR Pass. It can be used on the Shinkansen, but not on the fastest, not on the Nozomi or the train. And that's just a sort of rough guide for prices. And then I gave, this is, for example, Tokyo to Osaka unreserved, or Tokyo to Hiroshima. So basically the best thing to do is if you can try and think what you want to do when you're in Japan on a holiday, and then figure out, is it cheaper if I get the JR pass? Not always, but if you're doing a lot of travelling, then yeah. But it doesn't always cover the metro and some private lines. If you want to go to Nikko, that's great, you can get the JR, but it's not as frequent or as accessible as one private lines. If you're living in Japan, the bus. The bus is brilliant. It's because you can't get the JR pass, and you just saw how much a one-way is on the Shinkansen. The buses are brilliant, and this is the company I intended to use. They do it in English, you can pay, and all of that, and they've got a range of buses with different facilities, so if you're really cheap, you can just get a bus with no toilet, no nothing, you're crammed in a little seat. until you get to Osaka overnight. Or you can get ones with toilets, you can get ones with reclining seats, go back all the way, you can get lady-only buses, and all of that. So that's really good. So I would recommend, if you're living in Japan, this is possibly your best bet if you want to travel around. Japanese travel agents. If you want to go, I said I visited Okinawa, I booked through a travel agent. Again, the look of terror in their faces when I walked in wanting to book a holiday. We were the only Gaijin in the whole hotel. Yeah, when we were there. We got all the way booked. How do they know that was good? Because it was in one day. Yes, if you can speak a bit of Japanese, then it's like, oh great! And then they'll reel off everything about the holiday and you literally just sit and nod. Yes, I understand this. So number one travel, that's really good. Again, it's more for the day tours. I tend to find looking at it. They do have an office in Shinjuku with English-speaking staff. They're really nice. But HIS, I highly recommend. They have stores all over, wherever, and they'll have stands out with all these leaflets. So if you're not confident in your speaking Japanese, but you can read and roughly understand, they're great because then you can just point at the holiday you want and the number of days and things.
Do they have like a, sorry, you don't have that Japanese like in kanji. Is there also like a romantic version in this sense?
No, you don't tend to get. You would. Sorry, I've got a few more slides, and I'll go on. Accommodation, business hotel versus a regular hotel. You can find regular hotels quite easily on the web over here, and obviously over there. Business hotels, they're normally slightly cheaper, but they're less publicised on the website. So, but they're quite good. Hostels, I tend to use K's House. They've got venues in Kyoto, Hiroshima, Tokyo. They're really, really nice. They're really, really good, but they're really popular. So you have to look in advance. Sakura House also is quite good. Capsule hotels. These are great. I love them. I know some people may have claustrophobia and be like, I'm sleeping in a coffin. I love them. 3,000 yen for a night, and we could roll up any time. But if you're a woman, you can't roll up to just any old capsule hotel. They don't all take women. I know of 3 in Tokyo, in the whole of Tokyo.
Any particular reason why?
Normally, I think the whole design is there for people who have missed their last train and don't really have anywhere else to stay, and that would tend to be businessmen more than. That's a stereotype, but for example, the one I stayed in Asakusa, which is just outside the station, had 1 floor for women and 6 floors for men. That was thankfully, we could get in there. The other one, Akihabara has one and Shibuya has one. Those are the only 3 that I know of in Tokyo. I'm sure there are more, but those are the 3 areas I know of.
Were they comfortable at least, though? Were they comfortable?
Oh yeah, yeah, I loved it. It was great. Not everyone enjoys them. I know my friends who came over from the UK, they go, we're staying here. One did, and I was just like, yeah, first night they didn't enjoy it so much. And also, some of them may have sort of onsen communal baths. Will be separated into men and women, but a communal bath instead of showers and that. It really depends. So, get used to seeing people naked if you go to onsen. They're really good fun. I would highly recommend it.
By the way, are the dudes?
You hide them very sneakily with a plaster right on your back. So it's really obvious. It's more about not having them visible than not having them. If you can cover them up, it's fine. Especially when you're a foreigner, because literally you are stood there going, really?
It's also good to make 2 towels for your which I just have 1 towel for your head and then
One for your body.
and 1 for your body.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've done.
Because, yeah, Ryokan, a lot of people, this is quite a good site, obviously there are others. They're good if you want to go for like an onsen stay. Yeah, I remember the first time I went to an onsen, literally there were 4 of us all, we walked into the the bathroom with our towels around us, and no one else had a towel. All the women just wandering around, and we're there with our towels going, oh, okay. And you had to shower first. And we're all stood there waiting for the shower. It's like, oh, one's free. Pause. None of us want to be the first. One of my friends went first, and they were like, okay. And then we went off. Seriously, it's a very liberating experience.
Exactly, it's not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
Somebody who
Yeah. It's not knowing what to do. Yeah, they don't take their towels through. They'll just wander in naked. You shower first before you get into the onsen. And then you shower afterwards. It's fine. I think I've got useful tips. Try and learn hiragana and katakana. This is really useful when your taxi drives off in the wrong direction. And you're there going, excuse me, help. I don't speak any Japanese, but I know my house is that way. My first taxi experience, we dropped off my friend, and she spoke a little Japanese, and she was like, you need to go to Asakusa Eki, so Asakusa train station. And he started driving off, and 10 minutes later I was there going, I swear I only live 5 minutes from here. So I get him to stop, I managed to get him to stop. I'm like, Asakusa Eki. He's like, Katsuta Eki. Akatsuka? Katsuta. Literally back and forth on the road for about 5 minutes. He's there thinking, I want to go to Katsuta. I want to go to Akatsuka. And yeah, and he couldn't tell the difference from what I was saying, so thankfully I learnt my hiragana. And so I wrote it down. This is where I want to go. And he was very nice, he didn't charge me anymore and took me back. But also taxi drivers don't know everywhere off by heart like London or UK ones do. You need to be able to direct them. So if you can get them to a main landmark near where you live and then you can direct them there, that's great. If you've got a couple of new people just come from America who aren't entirely sure where their apartment is and you're the only one who can speak Japanese trying to direct the driver, you might end up doing what I did, was going, stop here, get out. They were pretty certain, I was pretty certain they were drunk, had no idea where they were. They were pretty certain their apartment was around here, so I just told them to stop and then took myself home. Sun was coming up, I said good night, he said good morning. I was not amused at the time. But if you're teaching, always have emergency worksheets so you can go when you've got 5 minutes left of a lesson with nothing to do. So find a resource, if you're a teacher, find a resource site that you like and just plagiarize it. All the time. They won't know. To do that, always carry at least 20,000 yen in cash. It's a cash society. So I learned the hard way after several weeks of constantly having to go to the cash machine because I ran out, because I was so used to just taking my debit card in everywhere and going, done. No, take cash everywhere. Also, know where to shop. If you're having to get furniture and things for your house, Hard Off, brilliant shop with a really, really bad name. They're going, I'm going to Hard Off. Book Off, also good for manga. So just know your shops. Find the shops you like and go to them. If you want anime stuff, K-Books is really good in Ikebukuro. Animate if you don't mind paying full price for things. I know a couple of doujinshi shops which I will talk to people in private about if they want to know. Mandalake is also quite a good one. But yeah, if you want cheap manga and you don't mind if it's second hand, Book Off. Book Off. Okay, so sorry, running over. I had to go really fast because we started a bit late. Sorry. Okay, I was going to give questions. So sorry, I know there's probably quite a few, and you can see me after.